Hello everyone, and welcome to CodeSprout's Fundamentals of JavaScript tutorial series. In this tutorial, we'll be covering functions. Functions are an essential programming concept that will allow your code to do advanced operations and procedures in a single line of code. Functions will build off the previous concepts we have covered and will help bridge our understanding so that we can tackle even more complicated topics such as objects. Let's begin. In this video, we'll be covering the following topics: an introduction to functions, function declarations, parameters and arguments, return values, callback functions, and finally, we will be using functions in action. So what are functions? Functions are one of the fundamental building blocks in JavaScript. A function is a reusable block of code designed to perform a particular task. Functions allow you to structure your code, make it more readable, usable, and maintainable. So why should we use functions? Code reusability. We can define a code once and use it many times with different inputs. Modularity. We can break down complex problems into smaller, manageable pieces, which will be particularly useful when we are building programs that do advanced and multiple steps. Abstraction. We can hide the complex implementation details behind our program through a simple user interface. And finally, organization. We can structure our code in a way that is more logical and organized in manner. Here's a basic function declaration. We're declaring a function using the function keyword, followed by the name of the function. And within the parentheses is a variable called name. And name is a variable that we will pass in when we are referencing this function again. But this function will simply print out hello name followed by an exclamation mark. As we can see right here, we are giving another variable called message the value of the greet function with the input value for name as Alice. And when we print the values of the message variable, we get the output, hello, Alice. In JavaScript, there are several ways to define functions. The two most common approaches are function declarations and function expressions. Understanding the differences between these methods is important for writing effective JavaScript code. On the left, we have function declarations. We can see that we are declaring a function called sayHello, which does the simple task of printing out hello world to our console. The key characteristics of function declarations are that they are hoisted to the top of their scope, meaning you can call the function before it's defined in your code. They must have a name, they cannot be anonymous, and they are not terminated with a semicolon. On the right-hand side, we have function expressions. Similarly to declared functions, we will use the function keyword, but typically towards assigning a value to a variable, and then defining the function right next to the variable. Now, whenever we call the variable, our code will execute the function that is bracketed within the curly braces of the expression. Key characteristics of function expressions are they are not hoisted to the top of their scope, so you cannot use them before they are defined. They can be anonymous, meaning that they don't need to have a name or even be named at all. They are typically assigned to variables and terminated with a semicolon, as we can see right here. And when named, the function name is only accessible within the function itself, which will be very useful for recursion. We will now go over parameters and arguments. Functions become truly powerful when they can receive input data and process it and return results based on that input data. In JavaScript, we use parameters and arguments to pass data into functions. In this coding example right here, we have a simple function which we named add that proceeds to add our two input variables. We can see that our input variables here are x and y, and the return statement is x plus y, giving us the addition value of the x plus y variable. So when we are calling a variable called sum, which is equal to the function of adding and then the number 5 and 3, we'll return a value of 8, with 5 being the x value and 3 being the y value, and 5 plus 3 will give us 8. Parameters and arguments are essential concepts in JavaScript functions. They allow functions to be flexible, reusable, and adaptable to different situations. By mastering these concepts, you'll be able to write more powerful and versatile JavaScript code. We can even use multiple parameters and have default parameters set for our functions. Now we will cover return values. One of the most powerful aspects of functions is their ability to return values. The return statement will allow a function to compute a result and pass it back to the code that called the function. Here, we have a simple function which will square an input parameter called number, and by returning number multiplied by number, that will give us the value that will then be attributed to either a variable or something that we can print into console. So here, if we have a variable called result, which is equal to calling the square function with an input parameter of 5, and then we decide to print the value of the result variable, we will get that our output is 25. Return values are what makes functions truly powerful in JavaScript. They allow functions to compute results, create new values, and build complex behaviors that can be used throughout your code. By mastering the various ways to use return values, you'll be able to write more modular, reusable, and effective JavaScript code. Finally, we will go over callback functions. Callback functions are another fundamental concept in JavaScript programming. They allow you to pass a function as an argument or a parameter to other functions, enabling powerful patterns like asynchronous programming, event handling, and functional programming techniques. So what exactly is a callback function? A callback function is a function that is passed as an argument to another function and is executed after the completion of that function. The function that receives the callback is often referred to as a higher order function. Some common use cases for callback functions are array methods, as many built-in JavaScript array methods use callbacks to process each element, event handling, since callbacks are commonly used for event handling events in web development, and asynchronous operations. Callbacks are traditionally used for handling asynchronous operations like timers, HTTP requests, and file operations. Some good practices for callbacks are keeping our callback functions simple, handling errors properly, using named functions for reusability, and considering modern alternatives. We will now use functions in action. You can use any IDE of your choosing, or use CodeSprout's built-in playground to try out this coding exercise. So, similarly to our previous exercise, we'll be building off of the multi-calculation tool that we built. But this time, instead of having an entire complicated set of instructions, we can condense the entire multi-calculation operation, which will perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division in a simple function. So, to begin, we'll start by declaring two variables called x and y, which will be the input values that will then be used to perform our multiple calculations. So to do so, we'll simply create let x and then set that equal to the prompt command followed by what our prompt is, which we'll simply type enter your first number, and then in parentheses we can simply say that this number will be the x value. And then we can close off that with a semicolon and do the same for the y variable, which we can then set equal to prompt followed by enter your second number, and then parentheses y, and end that off with a semicolon. Now we'll begin declaring our function. To do so, we'll simply type in the keyword function so that our JavaScript compiler knows that this is going to be a function, and then the name of our function, which in this case we'll simply type as multi-calculation. followed by our arguments or parameters, which will be the x and y variable. And then we'll create a set of curly braces, and within the curly braces, we can start our multi-calculation procedure. So we'll start off with the value of addition, which we can simply do by typing console.log and printing out what x plus y equals. So to do so, within our console.log statement, we can type out that addition, which will be x plus y, is equal to, and then we'll have a comma to separate our string statement with our integer value, and then within the comma, do the operation for x plus y, and end that off with the semicolon. We can reuse this logic for the subtraction and multiplication and division aspects of our program. So, for subtraction, we'll simply do x minus y, and then change the operation accordingly. For multiplication, we will do the same. And for division as well. And we'll make sure that all of this is contained within our curly braces. So now, if we simply run the function, which we can do by calling the function name, which is multi-calculation, and then passing in the x and y variables that we defined here earlier, and also for quick reference, this doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same name, since this could be named D or B, and we could just put in the parameters as D or B, and when the function is called, the values will be appropriated accordingly to our function definition. Before we run our program, there's a quick step that I want to go over. Again, since JavaScript is dynamically typed, meaning that the variables can be defined as whatever, and based on their value, our compiler will make the assumption and perform the operations accordingly. This can still cause confusions, especially when we're adding x and y, since our compiler won't know if x and y are explicitly number variables or just numbers representing a string, and therefore combining the two values. So, to specify that these are in fact number variables, we can use the number keyword, and then within the parentheses, close everything off. We can do the same logic for the y variable as well, and now our compiler knows for sure that x and y are number variables, and so when we call the addition command, we'll get the addition value instead of simply combining x plus y. So let's go ahead and run this program. For our first number, I will type in 10, and for our second number, I will type in 2. As you can see right here, the addition of 10 plus 2 gives us 12. The subtraction of 10 minus 2 gives us 8, and the multiplication of 10 times 2 gives us 20, and the division gives us 5. We're able to do this very complicated step of procedures through a simple multi-calculation XY statement here that we've previously defined. We can go ahead and even call our multi-calculation again for a different set of inputs. This time we can remove the let keyword since we've already defined and declared our variables x and y up here. So now if we go ahead and run this, for our first number we'll type something like 20, and the second number is 2. And now we're going to our next set of inputs, which will be any number. So we'll go back to using 10 and 2. And as you can see, we can generate the multi-calculation for two sets of these inputs with the simple multi-calculation command. Congratulations! You have successfully completed CodeSprout's tutorial on JavaScript functions. Functions are a fundamental part of programming and will play a vital role as you begin to create more complex and organized code. With functions, you can perform tasks like multi-calculation with just a single line once you've defined what the function should do. We encourage you to review the functions section in our lessons tab and test your knowledge with our interactive quiz. To keep building your skills, explore CodeSprout's built-in playground where you can continue practicing and writing modular and reusable code. In the next tutorial, we'll dive into another core concept, arrays, and exploring the many powerful methods you can use to work with them. See you then!